Kia ora, ko dia ho, hara mai, welcome to Homemade Let's Cook. Today we're making a gluten-free tan square. You could make it not gluten-free as well if you wish. So I've just done some prep work with the caramel filling, and that is a tin of condensed milk, 2 tablespoons of golden syrup, and 100 grams of butter. We just got that cooling on the stove. Now I'm going to make the base. So we've got 180 grams of butter and 90 grams of white sugar. Pop those in together, and we're just going to cream them or combine them together. Into that at the same time, you could also put your vanilla. Now for this gluten-free recipe, I'm just using the gluten-free plain flour, which suggests that it cooks the same as regular plain flour, but in my experience it's not always the case. So I actually like to pre-cook the base. Sometimes quite difficult cooking gluten-free recipes, so you've got to do just what works. So what we're going to do here today, so I've just got the cream, the butter and sugar. Just going to pop in 300 grams of gluten-free plain flour plus 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So that's going into here. Now, it is very soft, gluten-free flour. And then you'll find that there's a lot of dust that comes off it. So I probably should be doing this in a slightly bigger pan, but I haven't. So I'll just take some time to combine this and come back when we're ready to put it in our tray. Okay, so I ended up getting my hands dirty, and this ends up coming out a little bit like a pastry dough. So what we need to do now is, in our slice pan, have it lined, put in 2/3 of your mixture, because the rest of it is what is going to go on the top after we've put on the caramel mixture. So just press the dough that you've got into your slice pan. We've got a medium oven prepared. Okay, so that's pressed into our tin there. So as I say, pop it into the moderate oven. Keep an eye on it. It might not quite brown, but make sure it's nice and firm to the touch before we pull it out and pop on the next layers. I'll see you soon. So it's now been about 20 minutes and I've pulled the base out. It's quite firm to the touch and pretty much cooked, and that's absolutely fine. It hasn't really browned, but we were expecting that given the gluten-free nature of the flour. So the next thing we want to do, of course, is pour on our beautiful caramel. Sometimes it actually doesn't really matter how you make the caramel for this, but this one of course uses the condensed milk, 2 tablespoons of golden syrup and 100 grams of butter. Now is where the fun starts. So we've got 1/3 of our base mixture left, and this is quite crumbly, so it's up to you what you do to decorate the top. You can leave it loose, you can slightly roll it, it's completely up to you, and depending if you've worked out your 2/3 really well, you'll probably end up with a really good coverage of this kind of shortbread type topping as it is. So I'm just going to do a little bit of kind of pinching and rolling as I place this on the top. And of course, depends how much patience and time you've got as well as to how even and uniform you want to make those blobs of mixture. Make sure you evenly spread it to start with, and then if you've got bits left over, you can build it up after that. So spread over a first lot evenly as you can. It doesn't need to take a lot of time, but as I say, it depends on how much you want to pinch and roll and make your bumps uniform. But I don't think it really matters in a recipe like this or a slice like this. You're going to be cutting it into pieces anyway, and because it's got a little bit of baking powder in, you're going to expect it to rise, and they tend to form together as well. You'll also notice I've got close by the chopped chips. Again, it doesn't matter what kind of chopped chips that you use. I'm using dark, and it's compound chocolate. And the ones that I've got are really small little drops. Often I would use the larger drops and cut them up and sprinkle them over the top. Or you can buy the little chips and the little rectangular shape as well. So we're getting quite a roll on here, so we'll keep going with that. And then it's back in the oven for this, once we've put the chopped chips on the top. Do keep a really good eye on it. What will happen is that you'll be waiting for the top to brown, and it might not necessarily do that. So again, you want to just go with when it's firm to the touch, because you know that the base is actually now cooked. And that's usually the concern that we have when we do a slice like this, where you've got a wet layer on top of a dry layer, I suppose, or a base layer. Sometimes you can get away with it. It depends what you're cooking, but I tend to find it's a little bit easier and less foolproof when using gluten-free products to cook the base first. And you'll find it won't overcook. And it won't taste burnt, because it definitely won't burn. So I've just got a fair bit of this left, which is great, because I like a good topping on a tan square. Do you know we don't even call them tan squares in Australia? I didn't know what they were until I moved to New Zealand. But they're very yummy, hard to stop eating. In fact, all you have in Australia is basically the caramel slice, so I'm pretty sure the tan square must be a New Zealand invention, and I'm sure if I'm incorrect, someone will let me know on YouTube. Either which way, it's very nice. Doesn't matter where it was created, really. All right, so we've got a really nice layering coming together there. All right, so here we go with our chopped chips. You can just pepper those around. You don't want heaps, is what I will say, because that's not the idea of a tan square. So don't completely cover it with chopped chips. Just a really nice sprinkle. It's a really attractive slice anyway. The one thing I would say, given that we were talking about using regular flour, if you didn't want this to be gluten-free, is if you're not making it gluten-free and you're using regular flour, then just cook it all in one go. No need to cook your base layer first. So that, I better not tip that up too much. I'll actually take a photo before I put this in the oven so that you can see, because it's tended just to wobble around a bit. You will notice when it starts to cook and get ready in the oven that the sides of the caramel will start to really bubble and caramelize. So then you'll know that it's pretty much ready to come out. Okay, good luck. This is now out of the oven and I'm really happy with the bake on it. Now all that's left to do is let it cool. I'm going to let it cool in the pan for quite some time, just because with the gluten-free flour it is quite brittle, and then we'll cut it up and display it a bit later for you. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed making gluten-free 10 square. Please join me again. Ka kite.